Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the HMS Aurora and watched the stars through the main window. His ship had been traveling through empty space for 6 months now. They were far from Earth, looking for new planets and mapping unknown areas of the galaxy. The Aurora was not a big ship. It was built for exploration, not fighting. Jake's crew was small but good at their jobs. Lisa Martinez was his chief engineer. She kept the engines running smooth. Ben Carter handled all communications with Earth and other ships. Amy Stone was their science officer who studied everything they found. "Captain, we're coming up on the Kepler 447 system," said Ben from his station. "Should I drop us out of hyperspace?" Jake nodded. "Do it, let's see what's out there." The ship shook slightly as it came out of hyperspace. The stars changed from long white lines back to normal dots of light. Jake expected to see empty space with maybe a few planets around the twin suns ahead. What he saw instead made him step back in shock. "What in the world?" Jake whispered. The space in front of them was full of massive ships. Hundreds of them floated dead and dark between the two suns. Each ship was enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Some were as long as cities. Others looked like floating metal mountains with weapons sticking out everywhere. "Amy, are you seeing this?" Jake called to his science officer. Amy Stone was already bent over her instruments, her face pale. "Captain, these ships are incredible. My scanners show they're made of metals we don't even have names for. And the size, the smallest one is 10 times bigger than our ship. Are they alive? Any people on board?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head slowly. "All dead, sir. No life signs anywhere. And Captain, there's something else. These ships were all destroyed at the same time. The damage patterns are identical on every single one." Ben turned from his communication station. "Sir, I'm picking up a weak signal. It's coming from there." He pointed to a ship that was smaller than the others but still huge compared to the Aurora. Jake studied the floating graveyard around them. Whatever had happened here was big. Really big. An entire fleet of massive warships had been wiped out in one attack. The thought made his stomach turn cold. "Can you clean up that signal, Ben?" Jake asked. "Working on it now, sir." Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls. "It's getting stronger. I think someone's trying to talk to us." Lisa Martinez looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, my sensors are going crazy. The energy readings from these dead ships are off the charts. Whatever weapons hit them, they were incredibly powerful." Jake walked closer to the main window and stared at the destroyed fleet. Ships this big could probably destroy entire planets. What kind of enemy could wipe them all out so quickly? "Got it," Ben said suddenly. "The signal's coming through clear now. It's a distress call." The main screen flickered to life. A strange alien face appeared. The creature had blue-gray skin and large yellow eyes. It wore what looked like a military uniform with medals and symbols Jake didn't recognize. The alien spoke in a language they couldn't understand, but the ship's computer was working to translate. After a few seconds, words began to appear at the bottom of the screen. "Unknown vessel, this is Sub-Admiral Keth Vorian of the Zephyrian Empire. I need help. My entire fleet has been destroyed. Are you the enemy that did this?" Jake felt his heart speed up. This alien thought they might be responsible for destroying hundreds of massive warships. He looked around at his small crew on their tiny exploration ship and almost laughed. It would be like a mouse being blamed for killing a pack of lions. "Ben, open a channel," Jake said. "Let's try to talk to him." The screen showed the alien waiting. Behind him, Jake could see the inside of his ship was damaged. Lights flickered and smoke drifted in the air. "This is Captain Jake Harrison of the human exploration vessel HMS Aurora," Jake said slowly and clearly. "We are not your enemy. We just arrived here and found your ships like this. What happened?" The alien's large eyes grew even bigger. "Humans? I have never heard of your species. Your ship is very small. Are you sure you were not involved in the attack?" Jake spread his hands. "Look at our ship compared to yours. We have 12 people on board and basic exploration equipment. How could we destroy a fleet this size?" Sub-Admiral Vorian seemed to think about this. "You make a good point. Your vessel is indeed tiny, But the enemy that attacked us also had small ships, much smaller than ours. They appeared 3 days ago without warning. Amy Stone leaned forward with interest. Can you tell us more about these attackers? The alien's face became sad and angry. They came from nowhere, ships smaller than yours, moving faster than anything we've ever seen. Our weapons couldn't track them. They destroyed our entire 4th battle fleet in less than 5 minutes. 847 ships gone. Lisa Martinez whispered. 5 minutes? For this many ships? Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He was starting to get a very bad feeling about this whole situation. Sub-Admiral Vorian, Jake said carefully, can you describe these enemy ships in more detail? Small, fast, and deadly, the alien replied. They used energy weapons that cut through our strongest shields like they weren't even there. They moved in perfect coordination, like they were all controlled by one mind. We never stood a chance, Shu exchanged worried looks with his crew. The description sounded familiar, but he hoped he was wrong. We need to talk more about this, Jake said. Are you safe where you are? For now, yes, but I must report to my commanders at Fortress Prime. Will you come with me? They need to hear about what you witnessed here. Jake knew he had to make a choice. They could leave now and avoid whatever trouble was coming. Or they could go with this alien and try to help figure out what was happening. As a human officer, he knew his duty was clear. We'll come with you, Sub-Admiral. Lead the way. As the Aurora followed the damaged alien ship toward the edge of the system, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying straight into something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple first contact situation. The destroyed fleet around them was proof that something terrible was happening in this part of the galaxy, and he had a growing fear that humanity might be right in the middle of it. The journey to meet with Sub-Admiral Vorian's commanders took 2 days. During that time, Jake Harrison learned things that made his head spin. The Zephyrian Empire was huge beyond anything humans had imagined. Captain, Amy Stone said as she studied the data Vorian had shared with them. According to these files, the Zephyrian Empire controls over 3,000 star systems. They've been the dominant power in this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Jake sat in his captain's chair, trying to understand what this meant. 3,000 years? That's longer than human written history. Ben Carter looked up from his communication station. Sir, I've been talking more with Sub-Admiral Vorian. He says his empire has never faced a serious enemy before. They've always been the strongest force around. Lisa Martinez shook her head. Until 3 days ago. That's what worries me, Jake said. Amy, have you figured out anything more about those destroyed ships? Amy pulled up her analysis on the main screen. The energy signatures are very specific, Captain. Whatever weapons destroyed those ships used focused particle beams with a rotating frequency pattern. They're designed to cut through energy shields by constantly changing the beam properties. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? Jake asked, quietly. His crew looked at each other with growing concern. Lisa was the first to speak. Captain, that sounds exactly like our Mark 7 pulse cannons, the ones they put on our military ships last year. Jake felt his worst fears coming true. Show me the tactical data again, Amy. The screen filled with information about the attack on the Zephyrian fleet. Amy had cleaned up the data and organized it into a clear pattern. As Jake studied it, his heart sank. Ben, pull up the standard attack formation for Colonial Navy patrol squadrons, Jake ordered. Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls. A new image appeared next to the Zephyrian data. The 2 patterns matched perfectly. Oh no, whispered. Captain, this attack was carried out by human ships. Our ships. The bridge fell silent. Jake stared at the evidence in front of him. Somehow, a human military unit had stumbled into Zephyrian space and destroyed an entire alien fleet. The implications were terrifying. We need more information, Jake said finally. Ben, see if you can contact Earth Command without alerting. Vorian. Ben nodded and began working on a secure communication channel. While he did that, Jake called his crew together for a private meeting in the conference room. What we're looking at here is a potential disaster, Jake began. If I'm right, some of our people attacked the Zephyrians without knowing who they were fighting. But why would our ships fire first? Asked Lisa. We have strict first contact protocols. Amy pulled up another screen of data. I think I know. What happened? Look at this information about Zephyrian standard procedures. When they encounter unknown ships, they immediately demand surrender and threaten to destroy anyone who refuses. So our people probably thought they were being attacked, Jake said, understanding dawning on him. Our automatic defense systems would have kicked in. Ben joined the meeting, looking worried. Captain, I made contact with Earth Command. The HMS Yorktown and her escort squadron went missing in this sector 4 days ago. They were investigating some unusual energy readings. The timeline fits, Jake said grimly. The Yorktown squadron has 6 AI-controlled defense drones. Fast, small, and deadly. Exactly what Vorian described. Lisa leaned back in her chair. So what do we do now? Do we tell Vorian the truth? Before Jake could answer, the ship's communication system activated. Vorian's face appeared on the screen. Captain Harrison, we are approaching Fortress Prime. Prepare your ship for inspection and docking procedures. Jake walked back to the bridge and looked at the main screen. What he saw took his breath away. Fortress Prime was massive. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, it was covered with weapons, docking bays, and communication arrays. Ships moved in and out like insects around a hive. The smallest ships Jake could see were still much larger than the Aurora. Incredible, whispered Amy. How many people live there? Vorian heard her question. Fortress Prime houses 12 million Zephyrians, plus visitors from across the Empire. It is one of our smaller military bases. Jake tried to hide his shock. This smaller base was bigger than most human cities, and it was just one of many such bases across Zephyrian space. Follow the guide ship to Docking Bay 47, Vorian said. High Admiral Nex Thorn wants to meet with you immediately. As they flew closer to the massive station, Jake could see the incredible technology the Zephyrians had built. Their ships might be huge and slow, but they were also incredibly advanced in their own way. Energy shields shimmered around the station like soap bubbles. Massive guns tracked their approach, each one big enough to destroy a small moon. Captain, Lisa said quietly, our ship's computer is analyzing their weapons. These things are incredibly powerful. One shot from their smallest gun could vaporize our entire ship. But could they hit a fast-moving target? Jake asked. Lisa checked her readings. These weapons are designed for large, slow targets. Something small and fast might be able to avoid them, especially if it had good AI control. Jake nodded grimly. That explained how human drone ships had been able to destroy such a large fleet. The Zephyrians had built their entire military around fighting other slow, massive ships. They'd never encountered an enemy that used speed and precision instead of size and power. The Aurora docked without incident, though Jake noticed they were surrounded by armed guards as soon as they landed. The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 100 ships the size of the Aurora. Captain Harrison, Vorian said as he met them at the airlock. High Admiral Thorn is very interested in your testimony. He hopes you can help us understand what happened to our fleet. Jake and 3 of his crew followed Vorian through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were decorated with images of Zephyrian military victories going back thousands of years. In every image, Zephyrian ships were shown overpowering smaller enemies through sheer size and firepower. High Admiral Nex Thorn was waiting for them in a war room filled with tactical displays. He was larger than Vorian, with more medals and a stern expression that made Jake nervous. So, these are the humans, Thorn said, looking them up and down. You are much smaller than I expected. Are all your people this size? We come in different sizes, just like your people probably do, Jake replied diplomatically. Thorn gestured to the displays around the room. Captain Harrison, my empire is in chaos. Since the destruction of the 4th Fleet, 6 more battle groups have been attacked and destroyed, always by small, fast ships that appear without warning and vanish just as quickly. Jake's heart sank. The attacks were spreading. The enemy seems to know exactly where our fleets are positioned, Thorn continued. They strike with perfect precision and overwhelming force. In each case, our ships are destroyed before they can even identify their attackers. Amy Stone stepped forward. Admiral, Have you been able to recover any wreckage from the enemy ships? No, Thorn replied. They either destroy their own damaged vessels or remove them from the battlefield. We have found no trace of their technology. Jake knew why. Human military doctrine required complete sterilization of battle sites to prevent technology from falling into enemy hands. The AI drones would automatically destroy any damaged human equipment. Admiral, Jake said carefully, what can you tell us about how these attacks began? Was there any communication with the enemy before the fighting started? Thorn's expression darkened. In every case, our commanders followed standard procedure. They hailed the unknown vessels and demanded identification and surrender. The enemy response was always the same: immediate violence. Jake closed his eyes. He could picture exactly what had happened. Human ships, exploring unknown space, suddenly confronted by massive alien vessels demanding their surrender. The AI defense systems would have interpreted this as a hostile act and responded with maximum force. Admiral, Jake said, I think there might have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Thorn's voice rose. 7 fleets destroyed, billions of my people fleeing their homes in terror, and you call it a misunderstanding? Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A Zephyrian officer ran into the war room. Admiral, unknown ships have just entered our space. They're heading directly for Fortress Prime. Thorn turned to look at the tactical display. On the screen, Jake could see a familiar sight. 1 human ship with 6 smaller vessels in escort formation. That's the HMS Dakota, Jake whispered, recognizing the ship's configuration. You know these attackers? Thorn demanded. They're not attackers, Jake said desperately. They're probably looking for the missing Yorktown squadron. Admiral, please don't fire on them. Let me try to communicate with them first. But it was too late. Jake could see on the displays that Fortress Prime's massive weapons were already powering up, preparing to defend against what they saw as another enemy attack. Admiral, please, Jake begged. If you fire on them, you'll start a war that neither of our peoples wants. Thorn looked at him with suspicion. How do you know so much about these ships, Captain Harrison? Jake realized his time for keeping secrets was over. Because they're human ships, Admiral. Just like mine. The next few hours were the most tense of Jake Harrison's life. High Admiral Thorn had agreed to stop shooting at the human ships, but the situation was far from stable. Fortress Prime's damaged weapons were being repaired, while the HMS Dakota's escort drones circled the station like guard dogs. Captain, Amy Stone said as they worked in a conference room provided by the Zephyrians. I've been analyzing both our technologies. The differences are incredible. Jake looked up from the reports. He was reading about the destroyed Zephyrian fleets. What do you mean? Amy activated a holographic display that showed both human and Zephyrian ship designs. Look at this. Zephyrian ships are built like fortresses, thick armor, massive shields, huge weapons. They're designed to take enormous amounts of damage and keep fighting. And our ships? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Speed, precision, and AI coordination. We avoid damage instead of absorbing it. Our weapons are designed to find weak spots and exploit them instantly. Lisa Martinez joined the conversation from her engineering station. It's like comparing a knight in armor to a modern soldier. The knight has better protection, but the soldier has better weapons and tactics. Ben Carter looked up from his communication console. Captain, I've been monitoring Zephyrian military channels. The news of what happened here is spreading fast. Some of their commanders want to fight us, but others are scared. Scared of us? Jake asked. Scared of what we represent, Ben clarified. They've built their entire empire on being the strongest force in the galaxy. Now they've discovered they're not. Sub-Admiral Vorian entered the conference room looking tired and worried. Captain Harrison, Admiral Thorn wants to see you. We've received some disturbing news. Jake followed Vorian back to the war room where Thorn was studying multiple tactical displays. The Zephyrian Admiral looked up as they entered. Captain, we have a problem, Thorn said grimly. 3 of my fleet commanders have decided that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They're gathering their forces to launch a preemptive strike against your space. Jake felt his blood turn cold. How many ships are we talking about? Fleet Tice. Admiral Crace is bringing 2,000 ships from the core worlds. Admiral Vex has 1,500 ships from the Outer Rim. Admiral Noth has 800 ships from the industrial systems. Amy Stone, who had followed Jake into the war room, quickly did the math. That's over 4,000 ships, Captain. All heading for human space, Thorne continued. They plan to destroy every human world before your people can organize a proper defense. Jake sat down heavily in a chair. 4,000 massive warships against humanity's small defensive fleets. Even with superior technology, those were terrible odds. Admiral, can you stop them? Jake asked. Thorne shook his head. They outrank me in the overall command structure, and they have legitimate concerns. Your ships have proven they can destroy our fleets easily. From their perspective, striking first is the logical choice. But it's wrong, Vorian said quietly. Captain Harrison's people aren't trying to conquer us. This whole thing started as a mistake. Try explaining that to families who lost loved ones in the destroyed fleets, Thorne replied sadly. Jake's communicator buzzed. It was Captain Sullivan from the Dakota. Jake, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements in Zephyrian space. It looks like they're massing for an attack. We know, Pete. How long before they reach our territory? At their speed, maybe 6 days. But Jake, there's something else. I've been in contact with Colonial Command. They're sending reinforcements. Jake's heart sank further. How many ships? Everything they've got. The entire Colonial Navy plus all the AI drone squadrons. They're treating this as an invasion threat. Thorne overheard the conversation and looked alarmed. How many ships is that? About 300 combat vessels, Jake answered, plus maybe 2,000 AI drones. 2,000 AI drones like the ones that crippled my station? Thorne asked. Yes, sir. But Admiral, those numbers don't tell the whole story. Our ships are designed to fight as coordinated groups. Each human ship controls multiple AI drones, and they all share targeting data instantly. Amy Stone was working on her tablet, running tactical simulations. Captain, I'm getting some very bad numbers here. If 4,000 Zephyrian ships fight 300 human ships with full AI support, what's the result? Thorne asked. Amy looked up with a pale face. Mutual annihilation. The Zephyrian fleets would be completely destroyed, but the human losses would be catastrophic too. And that's just the opening battle. Opening battle? Vorian asked. Once both sides take heavy losses, they'll call for reinforcements, Jake explained. This could turn into a galactic war that destroys both civilizations. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Jake looked around at the Zephyrian officers and realized they were just as horrified by the prospect as he was. There has to be another way, Jake said finally. What do you suggest? Thorne asked. A demonstration, Amy Stone said suddenly. Admiral, what if we could show both sides what they're really facing? Make them understand that this war would be a disaster for everyone? How? Thorne asked. Amy's fingers flew over her tablet. We set up a controlled battle simulation. Pick a small number of ships from each side and let them fight under carefully controlled conditions. Show both commands what would really happen. In a full-scale war. Jake thought about it. It could work, but we'd need commanders from both sides to agree to it. And we'd need to make sure the demonstration is convincing enough to stop the war fleets, Lisa added. Thorne was studying the tactical displays again. The problem is time. My fleets will reach the edge of human space in 6 days. Your reinforcements will arrive about the same time. We don't have long to organize this demonstration. We also need to make sure both sides honor the results, Vorian pointed out. What if the losing side decides to attack anyway? Jake stood up and walked to the main display, studying the fleet positions. An idea was forming in his mind, but it was risky. Admiral Thorne, what if we combine the demonstration with negotiations? Set up a meeting between our leaders while the simulation battle is happening? You mean like a peace conference? Thorne asked. Exactly. Get the decision makers from both sides in the same place. Show them what a real war would cost and give them a chance to find a better solution. Amy was nodding enthusiastically. We could hold it at a neutral location, maybe on an uninhabited, planet between our territories. But would your people agree to that? Vorian asked. And would mine? Jake thought about the human leaders he knew. My people are explorers and builders, not conquerors. If they understand that the Zephyrians aren't actually trying to destroy humanity, they'll be willing to talk. And my people are practical, Thorn said slowly. If we can demonstrate that continuing this conflict would destroy the Empire, most of the fleet commanders will listen to reason. Most, but not all? Jake asked. Thorn's expression darkened. Fleet Admiral Crace has lost family in the destroyed fleets. He wants revenge more than he wants victory. He might not be willing to negotiate. Then we'll have to make sure the demonstration is so convincing that his own officers refuse to follow his orders, Jake said grimly. Ben Carter looked up from his station. Captain, I'm receiving a message from Colonial Command. They want to know our status and intentions. Tell them we're attempting to negotiate a peaceful solution, Jake ordered, and ask them to hold off on any aggressive actions until we can arrange a proper meeting. I'll send a similar message to my fleet commanders, Thorn added. Admiral, Jake said, I hope this works because if it doesn't, we're looking at the largest space battle in galactic history. With casualties in the millions, Amy added quietly. Thorn nodded grimly. Captain Harrison, for both our people's sakes, we need to make this work. Jake looked around the war room at the mixture of human and Zephyrian officers working together on the desperate plan. Then let's get started. We have 6 days to prevent a war. 5 days later, Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora and watched history unfold. The neutral planet below them was swarming with ships from both civilizations. Human vessels, small and sleek, shared space with massive Zephyrian ships that looked like floating cities. Captain, Ben Carter reported, both delegations have arrived at the surface base. The demonstration battle is set to begin in 1 hour. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Everything they had worked for in the past 5 days came down to the next few hours. Amy Stone looked up from her science station. The test fleets are in position. 10 Zephyrian cruisers against 3 human ships with AI drone support. Both sides have agreed to fight until one side is clearly defeated. And both sides understand this is just a demonstration? Jake asked. Yes, sir, Ben replied. All weapons are set to minimum power. Ships will be disabled, not destroyed. No one should be killed. Lisa Martinez joined the conversation from her engineering station. Captain, I've been monitoring the communications between the fleets gathering at the edge of our territories. The tension is getting worse. Jake knew what she meant. Despite their efforts, Fleet Admiral Crace was still bringing his massive force toward human space. On the human side, Colonial Admiral Kate Rivers had assembled the largest human battle fleet in history. Both forces were holding position, but barely. Any word from the peace talks? Jake asked. Admiral Thorn and Admiral Rivers are making progress, Ben reported. But the hardliners on both sides are demanding proof that negotiation is better than fighting. Then let's give them that proof, Jake said grimly. On the main screen, they could see the demonstration battle about to begin. The 10 Zephyrian cruisers formed a traditional battle line, their massive guns trained on the approaching human ships. The 3 human vessels, tiny by comparison, spread out with their AI drones deployed in a protective screen. This is Admiral Marcus Webb commanding the demonstration force, came a voice over the communication system. All ships ready to begin the test battle. This is Zephyrian Force Commander Dex Theron. My ships are ready. Jake watched tensely as the two forces approached each other. Around the planet, hundreds of ships from both fleets observed the demonstration. That would determine the fate of both civilizations. Human ships are opening fire, Amy reported. The battle was swift and decisive. The AI drones moved like a coordinated swarm, their precisely aimed weapons cutting through Zephyrian shields as if they didn't exist. The massive Zephyrian ships tried to respond, but their huge guns couldn't track the fast-moving targets. In less than 3 minutes, all 10 Zephyrian cruisers were disabled and drifting. The human ships hadn't taken a single hit. Demonstration complete, Admiral Webb reported. All Zephyrian vessels disabled. Human forces victorious with no casualties. The communication channels erupted with voices from both fleets. Jake could hear shock and dismay from the Zephyrian observers, while human voices expressed grim satisfaction. But that's not the whole story, Amy said, pulling up her analysis on the screen. Show them the casualty projections, Ben. Ben activated the ship's communication system to broadcast to all the watching fleets. Attention all vessels. The following analysis shows what would happen in a real battle with full-power weapons. The display showed the results of Amy's computer simulations. In a real fight using full-power weapons, the 10 Zephyrian cruisers would have been completely destroyed with all hands lost. But the human ships, while victorious, would have taken significant damage from the massive Zephyrian guns before the AI drones could disable all the enemy vessels. Now extrapolate that to the full fleets, Amy's voice continued over the communication system. 4,000 Zephyrian ships versus 300 human ships with AI support would result in the complete destruction of both forces. Estimated casualties: 15 million Zephyrians, 300,000 humans. The communication channels fell silent as both sides absorbed the numbers. And that's just the opening battle, Jake added, taking over the broadcast. Both sides would call for reinforcements, leading to an escalating war that could destroy both civilizations. Admiral Thorne's voice came over the communication system from the planet's surface. All fleet commanders report to the peace conference immediately. We need to talk. Over the next several hours, Jake watched as something remarkable happened. The demonstration had shocked both sides into realizing what they were really facing. The Zephyrian commanders finally understood that their massive ships couldn't win against human AI technology. The human leaders realized that even with superior technology, a war against the Zephyrian Empire would cost millions of lives. Captain, Ben reported, Fleet Admiral Crace is withdrawing his forces. He's calling off the attack on human space. And Admiral Rivers, Jake asked, ordering all human ships to stand down. The crisis is over. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he knew the real work was just beginning. Sir, Amy said, Admiral Thorne is requesting that we join the peace conference on the planet's surface. They want our input on the proposed alliance treaty. Jake nodded. Let's go make history. 6 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Aurora again, but everything had changed. Through the main window, he could see the joint human-Zephyrian research station that had been built in the system where they first made contact. Human ships worked alongside Zephyrian vessels, their crews learning from each other. Captain, Lisa Martinez reported, the new hybrid engines are working perfectly. By combining our AI technology with Zephyrian power systems, we've increased ship efficiency by 300%. And the cultural exchange programs? Jake asked. Amy, Stone smiled. Beyond our wildest expectations. Young Zephyrians are fascinated by human exploration philosophy. Young humans are amazed by Zephyrian engineering achievements. We're learning so much from each other. Ben Carter looked up from his station. Sir, we're receiving a message from Earth Command. They're officially appointing you as humanity's first ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire. Jake laughed. I guess that makes sense. We started this mess, we should help clean it up. It wasn't a mess, Captain, said a familiar voice. Sub-Admiral Vorian, now serving as the Zephyrian liaison to the joint station, entered the bridge. It was the beginning of something beautiful. Vorian had become a good friend over the past months, helping to bridge the gap between the two very different civilizations. Any word from the outer systems? Jake asked. The expansion is going well, Vorian replied. Joint exploration teams have discovered 12 new habitable planets. Both our peoples are working together to establish colonies. Jake nodded with satisfaction. The alliance had grown from a desperate attempt to prevent war into something much more valuable. Humans brought their advanced AI technology, speed, and exploration spirit. Zephyrians contributed their vast resources, established trade networks, and thousands of years of experience with galactic politics. Captain, Amy said, long-range sensors are detecting something interesting. There's an unknown ship approaching from the galactic rim. It's not human or Zephyrian design. Jake felt a familiar excitement. Another first contact? Looks like it, sir. Jake looked around the bridge at his mixed crew of humans and Zephyrians working together. Well, let's go see who our new neighbors are. But this time, let's try to avoid any misunderstandings. As the Aurora moved toward the unknown ship, Jake reflected on how much had changed since that day when they stumbled upon the destroyed Zephyrian fleet. A simple exploration mission had led to the discovery that humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy. It had nearly started the largest war in galactic history, but it had also created an alliance that was making both civilizations stronger. The unknown ship was small, about the size of a Zephyrian shuttle. As they got closer, it became clear that whoever built it had technology different from both humans and Zephyrians. "They're hailing us," Ben reported. "On screen," Jake ordered. The face that appeared was unlike anything they had seen before. The alien had green skin, multiple eyes, and a mouth that moved in ways that suggested a completely different vocal system. "Greetings," the alien said in a voice that sounded like music. "I am Explorer Zenth of the Crystalline Collective. We have been watching the recent changes in this sector with great interest." Jake smiled and stepped forward. "Welcome, Explorer Zenth. I'm Captain Jake Harrison of the Human Zephyrian Alliance. We're very pleased to meet you." "Alliance?" Zenth asked, sounding surprised. "Two species working together as equals? This is most unusual in our experience." Vorian joined Jake in front of the screen. "We found that cooperation works better than conquest, Explorer Zenth. Perhaps we could share our experiences with your people?" Zenth's multiple eyes seemed to sparkle with interest. "We would be honored to learn more. Our collective has encountered many species, but few who have chosen partnership over domination." As the conversation continued, Jake realized that their small exploration ship had once again stumbled into something much larger than they expected. But this time, they were ready for it. The alliance between humans and Zephyrians had created something new in the galaxy, a model for how different species could work together. The war room fell completely silent after Jake's confession. High Admiral Thorne stared at him with his large yellow eyes wide with shock. Sub-Admiral Vorian took a step back, his hand moving toward his weapon. "Human ships?" Thorne said slowly. "You're telling me that your people have been destroying my fleets?" Jake held up his hands peacefully. "Admiral, please listen to me. This is all a terrible mistake. My people don't even know your empire exists. They're explorers and defenders, not conquerors." "Defenders?" Thorne's voice was rising. "They destroyed 800 ships in 5 minutes. Because your ships threatened them first," Jake explained desperately. "Our military teaches that any demand for surrender is an act of war. Our ships responded to what they thought was an attack." Amy Stone stepped forward with her tablet. "Admiral, may I show you something? I've been studying the tactical data from your destroyed fleets." Thorne nodded stiffly. Amy activated the room's main display and showed her analysis of the attacks. "Look at this pattern," Amy said. "In every battle, your ships fired first. Small warning shots, but shots nonetheless. To human AI systems, even a warning shot is considered hostile action." "AI systems?" Vorian asked. "Your ships think for themselves?" "The small escort ships do," Jake explained. "They're designed to protect human vessels automatically. When they detected weapons fire, even warning shots, they responded with maximum ABO, force to eliminate the threat." Ben Carter, who had been quietly monitoring communications, looked up urgently. "Captain, the Dakota is trying to hail the station. Captain Pete Sullivan is requesting permission to search for the missing Yorktown." "Let me talk to him," Jake said to Thorne. "I can explain the situation before this gets worse." But the display screens were already showing that Fortress Prime's main guns were targeting the human ships. The HMS Dakota and her 6 escort drones looked tiny compared to the massive weapons pointed at them. "Admiral, those weapons will be seen as a threat," Jake warned. "If you lock targeting systems on human ships, the AI drones will respond defensively." "Your ships are in my space, threatening my people," Thorne replied coldly. "I will defend my station." "But you don't understand," Lisa Martinez said, speaking up for the first time. "Our technology is completely different from yours. Your big guns can't hit our small, fast ships, but our weapons can cut through your shields easily." Thorne laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Impossible. Fortress Prime has the strongest defenses in the Empire. No weapon can penetrate our shields. Amy quickly pulled up the technical data about human weapons. Admiral, look at this. Our particle beam weapons rotate frequencies specifically to defeat energy shields. They were designed to fight enemies with exactly your type of technology. You designed weapons specifically to fight us? Vorian asked suspiciously. No, Jake said. We designed them to fight an enemy we imagined might exist someday. We never knew you were real. On the display, they could see the Dakota moving closer to the station. The 6 escort drones spread out in a defensive pattern, their sensors scanning. The massive weapons pointed at them. Admiral, Jake pleaded, please let me talk to Captain Sullivan. I can prevent this from becoming a battle. Thorne considered for a moment, then nodded. Do it. But any hostile move from your ships and I will destroy them all. Ben opened a communication channel to the Dakota. Captain Pete Sullivan's face appeared. On the screen, he looked surprised to see Jake. Harrison, what are you doing here? We've been looking for the Yorktown for days. Pete, listen to me very carefully, Jake said. You're in the middle of a diplomatic situation. These aliens think we're the enemy that destroyed their fleets. What fleets? Sullivan asked, confused. Jake quickly explained what they had discovered. As he talked, he could see Sullivan's expression change from confusion to horror. Oh my God, Sullivan whispered. Jake, the Yorktown squadron engaged an alien fleet 4 days ago. They thought they were under attack when the aliens demanded their surrender. How many ships did they destroy? Thorne demanded. Sullivan looked uncomfortable. All of them, sir. Admiral, our AI drones are programmed to eliminate all threats completely. They don't leave survivors who might report back and bring more enemies. The room erupted in angry voices from the Zephyrian officers. Thorne raised his hand for silence, his face dark with rage. Captain Sullivan, Thorne said coldly, your people murdered the crews of 847 ships. Innocent. Soldiers following standard procedures. Admiral, please understand, Sullivan replied. Our people thought they were defending themselves. When your ships demanded surrender and then fired weapons, our AI systems classified them as hostile. Everything that happened was automatic defensive action. Automatic? Vorian asked. You mean your machines decided to kill my people without any human making that choice? Jake realized how bad this sounded. Admiral, our AI systems are designed to protect human lives. They react faster than humans can think when they detect threats. And now more human ships are in my space, threatening my station, Thorne said. Should I expect your machines to murder everyone here too? No, sir, Sullivan said firmly. My ships are under strict orders to avoid conflict. But Admiral, you need to know that your weapons targeting my ships is being interpreted as a hostile act by my escort drones. As if to prove his point. Warning. Lights began flashing on the Zephyrian tactical displays. The 6 human drones had moved into attack positions around the Dakota. They're preparing to fire, a Zephyrian officer reported. Enemy weapons are charging. They're not enemy weapons, Jake said desperately. They're defensive systems reacting to your targeting scanners. Admiral, please power down your weapons before this escalates. I will not show weakness to an enemy that has already destroyed 7 of my fleets. Thorne replied stubbornly. Amy Stone was studying the tactical display with growing alarm. Captain, the AI drones are calculating firing solutions for 17 different targets on the station. If they engage, they'll cripple Fortress Prime's defenses in seconds. Admiral Thorne, Jake said urgently, you have 12 million people on this station. Please don't let Pride start a battle that will get them killed. But it was too late. A nervous Zephyrian weapons operator, watching the small human ships maneuvering around his station, fired a single warning shot that passed close to the Dakota. The response was instant. The 6 AI drones moved so fast they seemed to teleport. In less than 30 seconds, 17 of Fortress Prime's main gun emplacements were smoking ruins. 2 Zephyrian cruisers that had moved to intercept the drones were drifting helplessly with their engines destroyed. The battle, if it could be called that, was over before most people realized it had started. Impossible, Thorne whispered, staring at his tactical displays. Those weapons took 50 years to build. They were destroyed in seconds. Admiral, Sullivan's voice came over the communication system. I'm sorry about the damage. My ships responded automatically to weapons fire. Please don't make this worse by continuing to fight. Jake looked around the war room at the shocked faces of the Zephyrian officers. They were finally understanding what they were really facing. Admiral Thorne, Jake said quietly, now you see why your fleets were destroyed so quickly. This isn't about who has bigger guns or stronger shields. Our technologies evolved along completely different paths. Thorne slumped in his command chair, looking suddenly old and tired. 3,000 years of military supremacy ended in 30 seconds by ships smaller than our shuttlecraft. It doesn't have to end, Amy Stone said. Admiral, your people and mine don't have to be enemies. This whole thing started because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that has killed hundreds of thousands of my people, Vorian said bitterly. And I'm sorry for that, Jake replied. But continuing to fight will only kill more people on both sides. What if we could find a better way? Thorne looked up at him with tired eyes. What do you mean? I mean an alliance, Jake said. Your empire has resources and knowledge that humanity needs. Our technology might be useful to you too. Instead of destroying each other, we could help each other. You would ally with us after what your ships have done? Thorne asked suspiciously. Admiral, my ship has 12 people on it. Your station has 12 million. Our entire space fleet has maybe 1,000 ships. Your empire has millions. We're not trying to conquer you. We're trying to survive and learn. Thorne was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical displays that showed his crippled defenses and the small human ships that had destroyed them so easily. Captain Harrison, he said finally, I think you and I need to have a very long conversation about the future. Jake nodded, feeling a small spark of hope. Maybe they could find a way to fix the terrible mistake that had started this whole crisis. Yes, sir. I think we do.